At a diner, my daughter called me an uneducated failure and a burden, screaming that I had never given her anything of value. She had no idea her broke mother had secretly paid for her luxury apartment, her car, and her designer lifestyle for the past 10 years. She thought she was delivering a final, cutting insult. She didn't know I was about to deliver a final, 7-figure statement for her entire life, with her very first rent bill attached. Before I begin, I just want to say, thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you my story. My name is Lena Jackson. I am 65 years old, and my hands tell the story of my life. They are not the soft, manicured hands of the women in my daughter's world. The knuckles are a little swollen with arthritis, the skin cross-hatched with the fine, silvery lines of a lifetime of labor. These are the hands that built an empire out of bleach and buckets. For 40 years, I was the owner, operator, and heart and soul of Lena's Clean Sweep, a commercial cleaning company I started with a single mop and a dream out of the back of my late husband's pickup truck. Most people hear cleaning company and they think of maids and dustpans. My world was different. I specialized in the big, dirty, complicated jobs no one else wanted. Post-construction cleanups for downtown skyscrapers, industrial deep cleans for automotive plants, sterile room certifications for hospitals. It was a gritty, unglamorous, and profoundly profitable business. I was a damn good businesswoman. I knew how to bid a contract, how to manage a crew, and how to turn dirt into dollars. By the time I was done, Lena's Clean Sweep was a multi-million-dollar enterprise with contracts all over the state of Michigan. 5 years ago, after my husband, Robert, passed, a national facilities management conglomerate made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I sold the company, the brand, the whole operation. And after the lawyers and the government took their share, I was left with a fortune that would have been unimaginable to the young woman who had once scrubbed floors on her hands and knees. I told no one. I took the money and, with the help of my husband's old army buddy and our financial advisor, Frank Moss, I tucked it away into a series of quiet, unshowy investments. I went home to my paid-for-brick bungalow in the Bagley neighborhood of Detroit, the house Robert and I bought when we were first married, and I changed nothing. I still shop at the neighborhood grocery store. I still drive a sensible Ford. I still live the simple, working-class life I have always known. To my only child, my daughter, Dr. Alicia Jackson Price, I am a sweet, simple, and slightly embarrassing relic. She believes I am living on a modest retirement fund, a woman whose life peaked long ago and is now in a slow, gentle decline. She does not know that her uneducated mother is one of the wealthiest women in our family's history. This quiet, simple life is a lie. It is an experiment. A 10-year investigation into the character of the brilliant, sophisticated, and deeply ungrateful stranger I raised. I wanted to see if she loved the mother, or just the mother's money. The results have been coming in for years. And they have been, without exception, brutal. The experiment began, in truth, more than 10 years ago, before I even sold the company. It was born out of a conversation I had with my husband, Robert. Alicia was in graduate school then, getting her PhD in art history, and the distance between her world and ours was already becoming a vast, unbridgeable chasm. She would come home for holidays, her conversation peppered with French phrases and the names of obscure theorists. She would look at our comfortable, lovingly decorated home with a kind of pitying condescension. She was embarrassed by us, by her father's calloused hands, by my practical, no-nonsense way of speaking. She was ashamed of the dirt beneath the fingernails that had paid for her ivory tower education. Robert, a master plumber who was as proud of his trade as I was of mine, saw it with a painful clarity. "She's building a wall between us, Lena," he'd said one night, his voice heavy, "and she's using the bricks we gave her to do it." We knew she would always need our financial help. The life of an academic, a museum curator, is not a lucrative one, especially for someone with Alicia's expensive tastes. But we were afraid of what our money was turning her into. We didn't want to enable her snobbery, to reward her for her shame, so we devised a plan with Frank Moss. It was a plan born of love, but also of a deep, strategic caution. We created the Alicia Jackson Price Support Trust. It was a separate legal entity, funded with a significant portion of our business profits, and its sole purpose was to anonymously support the lifestyle our daughter was so desperate to project. When she graduated and got her prestigious but modestly paying job at the Detroit Institute of Arts, she complained that she could never afford to live in a neighborhood that reflected her new status. A few weeks later, a patron of the arts, an anonymous benefactor managed by a law firm, offered to sponsor a residence for a promising young curator. The result was the sleek, expensive loft in the trendy Midtown district that Alicia now calls home. She believes it is a perk of her job, a testament to her own brilliance. She has no idea the anonymous patron is her mother. When she complained about her old college car, the trust anonymously arranged for a long-term lease on a stylish new Audi. She believes it's a corporate lease through the museum. When she lamented her inability to afford the designer clothes and expensive dinners her colleagues took for granted, the trust set up a high-limit credit card, administered through a third-party payroll company, which she believes is a research and entertainment stipend from the museum. For 10 years, we have been the silent, invisible architects of her sophisticated life. We have funded her apartment, her car, her clothes, her vacations. We have allowed her to live the life of an intellectual aristocrat, completely free from the financial realities that govern the lives of ordinary people. It was a perfect, seamless deception, and it allowed us to conduct our experiment. We wanted to see if, freed from the need to ask us for money, she would come to us for love, for connection, for family. We wanted to see if she would love us for who we were, not for what we could give her. Robert passed away before we could see the final results, but I have continued the experiment. And the data I have collected, in the 5 years since his death, has been a long, slow, and meticulously documented study in contempt. Alicia's shame was a constant, low-grade hum in the background of our relationship, but sometimes, in public, it would spike into a shrill, deafening siren. The most painful example occurred last spring, at a members-only gallery opening at the Detroit Institute of Arts. It was a major event for her, the unveiling of a new exhibit she had curated. She had invited me, not, I suspect, out of a genuine desire for my presence, but out of a sense of filial obligation, a box to be checked. I dressed with care, in a simple but elegant black dress and a string of pearls my Robert had given me. I knew I was entering her world, and I wanted to do her proud. When I arrived, the museum was buzzing with the low, confident chatter of the city's cultural elite. Alicia, looking stunning in a severe architectural dress, was the center of attention, gliding through the crowd with a glass of champagne in her hand. She saw me and her smile, for a fraction of a second, tightened. She came over and gave me a perfunctory, air kiss on both cheeks. "Mom," she said, her voice a low, urgent whisper. "Thank you for coming. Just try to stick to the art, okay? A lot of these people are museum donors. Very important." The implication was clear. Don't talk too much. Don't embarrass me. Later in the evening, she was holding court with a small group of academics and a wealthy-looking couple who were hanging on her every word. She was in her element, speaking eloquently about postmodernism and the deconstruction of the artistic gaze. She saw me approaching and, for a moment, I saw a flicker of pure, unadulterated panic in her eyes. "And this," she said, as I came to stand beside her, her voice a little too bright, a little too loud, "is my mother." The group turned to me, their expressions polite and curious. The wealthy woman, a formidable figure dripping in diamonds, extended a hand. "A pleasure to meet you," she said. "Your daughter is a genius. You must be so proud. What is it you do, my dear?" It was a simple, polite question, but to Alicia, it was a social hand grenade. I saw her brace for the impact. Before I could answer, Alicia jumped in, her laughter a high, brittle sound. "Oh, my mother is retired now," she said quickly, placing a hand on my arm in a gesture that was meant to look affectionate but was actually a desperate attempt to control the situation. "She spent her life in domestic management. A real homemaker of the old school." Domestic management. The euphemism was so condescending, so dismissive of my life's work, that it was like a slap in the face. She had taken my 40-year career, my multi-million-dollar empire of grit and sweat, and reduced it to the status of a 1950s housewife. The conversation quickly moved on, leaving me standing there, my polite smile frozen on my face. The wealthy woman had lost interest in me. I was just a homemaker from the old neighborhood, a quaint, uninteresting footnote in the brilliant story of my daughter. I spent the rest of the evening on the periphery, a ghost at my daughter's triumph. I watched her bask in the admiration of her peers, and I understood, with a clarity that was as painful as a shard of glass in my heart, that her success was predicated on the erasure of my own. She could not be Dr. Alicia Jackson Price, the brilliant intellectual, if she was also the daughter of Lena Jackson, the janitor. Her new identity required the death of my old one, and she was a daughter who was more than willing to bury her mother in order to rise. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. It was Alicia. Her tone was one I had come to know well, a mixture of forced, impatient politeness and the underlying assumption that my time was infinitely less valuable than hers. "Mom," she began, without any of the usual pleasantries. "I need to see you. Something has come up. Something important." "Ah, of course, honey," I said. "You're welcome to come over to the house this evening. I can make us some dinner." "No," she said, the word sharp, dismissive. "No, I don't have time to come all the way out to Bagley. And I need to talk to you today. During my lunch break." "All right," I said, my voice even. "Where would you like to meet?" "His estate." I was expecting her to name one of the chic, expensive cafes in Midtown, near the museum, her usual territory. Her answer surprised me. "Let's just meet at that old place," she said, her voice laced with a weary, condescending sigh. "That diner you and Dad always liked, in Corktown. Dooley's." Dooley's Coney Island. The name was a punch to the gut. It was not just a diner. It was a sanctuary, a landmark of our family's history. Robert and I had gone there on our first date. We had taken Alicia there for hot dogs and milkshakes every Saturday when she was a little girl. It was a place of warm, happy memories, a place that smelled of grilled onions and nostalgia. It was the absolute antithesis of the sophisticated, curated world Alicia now inhabited. Her choice was not a sentimental one. I knew that instantly. It was a strategic move, a deliberate act of psychological stage setting. She was summoning me not to our shared history, but to a place that she now found embarrassing and common. She was choosing a backdrop that would, in her mind, highlight the vast, unbridgeable gulf between her life and mine. She was taking me back to the old neighborhood to remind me of my place, to put me on the defensive before the conversation had even begun. It was a petty, cruel, and deeply revealing power play. "Dooley's is fine, Alicia," I said, my voice betraying none of the hurt I felt. "What time?" "1 o'clock, she said. "And please, try to be on time. I have a meeting at 2:30. I arrived at the diner at 10 minutes to 1. The place was exactly as I remembered it. The long formica counter, the worn red vinyl booths, the comforting clatter of plates and silverware. I slid into a booth near the back and ordered a cup of black coffee. Alicia arrived at 1:10, breezing in like a creature from another planet. She was dressed in a severe, all-black outfit that looked ridiculously out of place in the cheerful, unpretentious diner. She did not kiss me hello. She slid into the booth opposite me, a look of profound distaste on her face as she surveyed her surroundings. "God, this place hasn't changed a bit," she said, her words a judgment, not a compliment. She pulled a sanitizing wipe from her expensive leather handbag and meticulously cleaned her section of the table. "That's why I like it," I said quietly. A waitress, a woman with a kind, tired face, came over. "What can I get for you, hun?" Alicia looked at the simple laminated menu with a theatrical shudder. "I'll just have a bottle of sparkling water," she said. "San Pellegrino if you have it." The waitress just blinked. "We have tap water, hun. Or Verner's." Alicia sighed, a sound of deep, worldly suffering. "Tap water is fine," she said, as if she were making a great sacrifice. The stage was set. The power dynamic had been established. And my daughter, my brilliant, cruel, and deeply unhappy daughter, was now ready to make her demand. The waitress set down Alicia's glass of tap water and my coffee refill and bustled away. Alicia ignored the water. She leaned forward, her elbows on the newly sanitized table, and got straight to the point. There was no small talk, no pretense of a social call. This was a business meeting, so, she began, her voice low and serious, the voice she used when she was about to unveil a new, important acquisition for the museum. I have some rather life-changing news. I've been offered the Moreau Fellowship. She said the name as if I should be impressed. I was. The Moreau Fellowship was one of the most prestigious curatorial programs in the world, a year-long residency at a small, exclusive museum in Paris, dedicated to the study of post-war European art. It was a massive, career-defining opportunity. Alicia, that's wonderful, I said, and my congratulations were genuine. For a fleeting moment, a flicker of the old maternal pride cut through the years of disappointment. That is a tremendous honor. Your father would have been so proud. Yes, well, it is, she said, accepting my praise as her due. It's the culmination of everything I've been working towards. It will put me on the international map. It's the kind of thing that leads to a directorship at a major museum. It is, in short, everything. She paused, taking a deliberate breath. However, she continued, there is a complication. The fellowship itself comes with a generous stipend, but it does not cover the initial relocation and housing costs. And because it's Paris, and because of the circles I will be moving in, I can't just live in some student hovel. I found the perfect apartment, in the 6th arrondissement, near the Luxembourg Gardens. It is significant. I'm sure it is, I said. The landlord requires a full year's rent up front, as a deposit, she said, plus a security deposit and a broker's fee. The total amount I need to secure the apartment and to handle the initial moving costs is substantial. She named a figure. It was a breathtaking sum, more than the down payment on my first house. She then slid a sleek, expensive-looking folder across the table. It was a prospectus for the apartment, complete with glossy photos of a beautiful, Haussmann-era flat with herringbone floors and a view of the Eiffel Tower. It was a fantasy life, printed on high-gloss paper. She looked at me, her expression now a mixture of impatience and absolute, unshakable expectation. She had not come here to ask for my help. She had come here to present me with a problem she had already decided it was my duty to solve. The deposit is due in 2 weeks, she said, her voice a clear, unmistakable command. It is non-negotiable and non-refundable. So, we need to figure this out. Now. The word we was a masterful, manipulative choice. She was framing her problem as our shared responsibility. I looked at the glossy photos of the Parisian apartment. I looked at my daughter's hard, expectant face. And I played my part. I summoned the persona of Lena Jackson, the simple, retired woman from Bagley, the woman who clipped coupons and worried about the price of gas. I pushed the folder gently back towards her. Alicia, honey, I said, my voice full of a carefully feigned, regretful sympathy. This is an incredible opportunity, and you deserve it. But a sum like that, I don't have that kind of money. You know, I'm on a fixed income. My pension, the social security, it's enough to live on, but it's not Paris apartment money. I had delivered my lines perfectly. I had presented her with the obstacle she had come here expecting to encounter. And in doing so, I had just handed her the opening she had been waiting for, the excuse she needed to finally, completely, and volcanically unleash a decade of simmering, contemptuous resentment. My gentle, regretful refusal was the spark that ignited the inferno. Alicia's face, which had been a mask of impatient expectation, contorted into a sneer of pure, unadulterated contempt. The thin veneer of civility, of a daughter discussing her future with her mother, was ripped away, revealing the raw, ugly snobbery that lay beneath. A fixed income, she repeated, her voice a low, venomous hiss. She said the words as if they were a disease, a disgusting affliction that she was being forced to confront. A pension. My God, do you hear yourself? That is the entire problem, isn't it? It has always been the problem. And time. She leaned across the table, her eyes, which I had once thought were so beautiful, now narrowed into hard, glittering slits. I come to you with the single greatest opportunity of my life, a chance to finally break free, to achieve something on a global scale, and all you can talk about is your pathetic little fixed income. Do you have any idea at all, how hard it has been for me? I stared at her, genuinely confused. Hard for you? Alicia, you have had every advantage. Advantage? She shrieked, her voice rising, causing the few other patrons in the diner to turn and look. She didn't care. She was beyond the point of caring about appearances. What advantage? The advantage of having a mother who thinks a new furnace is a major capital investment. The advantage of having to lie and scrape and claw my way into a world that you have never even had the imagination to conceive of. The torrent of her resentment, pent up for years, now came flooding out in a foul, unstoppable rush. I have had to spend my entire adult life overcoming you, she spat, her words like stones. Overcoming this cheap, working class, small-mindedness. I had to teach myself how to dress, how to speak, how to order wine in a restaurant. I had to build a world for myself, a world of art and intellect and sophistication, with absolutely no help from you. Alicia, that's not fair, I whispered, my heart beginning to break. We gave you the best education. You paid for it. She shot back. You wrote the checks, but you never understood it. You never valued it. You thought a PhD in art history was some cute little hobby. You never once understood that I was trying to build a life of the mind, a life of beauty, a life that was the exact opposite of your world of bleach and floor wax. And then came the words, the three, carefully chosen, and utterly devastating labels she had been waiting her whole life to pin on me. You are a failure, mother, she said, her voice dropping again, becoming a cold, hard, and deeply personal indictment. You had a successful little business, yes, a janitorial service, and you were content with that. You never had the ambition to be anything more, to achieve anything of real, lasting cultural value. You were a small person, with small dreams. She leaned in closer, her face just inches from mine. And you are an uneducated woman, she continued, her voice a venomous whisper. You may be smart, in a folksy, street-smart kind of way, but you have no refinement, no sophistication. You have never read the right books. You have never seen the right art. You have never understood the world. I have dedicated my life to. She sat back then, a look of final, damning judgment on her face. And do you know what that makes you? She asked, her voice now filled with a kind of weary, theatrical pity. It makes you a burden. My entire life, you have been a weight. A constant, invisible weight of your working-class shame. A past I have had to run from. A story I have had to constantly apologize for. And now, when I finally have a chance to shed that weight for good, you are telling me you can't even help me with the one thing you're good at, which is money. The cruelty of the words, the sheer, breathtaking ingratitude, was a physical thing. It was a poison dart, and it had found its mark, deep in my mother's heart. I sat in the worn vinyl booth of the diner, the scent of grilled onions and old coffee suddenly nauseating, and I felt the world tilt on its axis. The words she had just spoken, failure, uneducated, burden, were not just insults. They were a verdict. They were the final, damning judgment of a daughter on her mother. A judgment that had been deliberated in the secret, resentful court of her heart for years. I looked at her, at my beautiful, brilliant, and monstrously cruel child, and I saw a stranger. The little girl who had held my hand, the young woman whose graduation I had wept at with pride, she was gone. In her place was this cold, hard, and deeply unhappy person, a person so consumed with her own perceived victimhood that she was completely blind to the truth. I tried, one last time, to appeal to the person I thought she was, to the child I had raised. Alicia, I said, my voice a near whisper, the words catching in my throat. Everything I did, everything your father and I did, it was for you. We worked our fingers to the bone so that you could have the life we never had. So that you could go to the best schools, so that you could study art, so that you would never have to know the feel of a mop in your hand or the ache in your back after a 16-hour shift. Everything we had, we gave to you. My words, which were a simple, heartfelt statement of fact, seemed to enrage her even more. She saw my love not as a gift, but as a transaction for which she was now being unfairly billed. She let out a short, sharp, and utterly mirthless laugh. "Oh, please," she sneered, her voice dripping with a final, devastating condescension. "Don't play the martyr, mother. It doesn't suit you. You did what you had to do. You ran your little business. You paid your bills. That's what you were supposed to do. But don't you dare try to take credit for my success." She gathered her expensive handbag, preparing to leave. She stood up, looking down at me in the booth, a final, dismissive queen delivering her last decree to a vanquished subject. "I have achieved everything in my life in spite of you," she said, her voice as cold and clear as a winter morning. "I have clawed my way into a world of beauty and intellect that you can't even comprehend. And I have done it on my own. You have never given me anything of real value. You have never given me anything of real value." That was it. That was the final, killing blow. The 10 years of secret, anonymous, and total financial support. The apartment she lived in. The car she drove. The clothes on her back. The food she ate. All of it, in her mind, was nothing. It was not of real value. The only thing of value was what she had achieved, in her own mind, on her own. In that moment, something inside me, a deep, foundational plate of a mother's unconditional love, broke. It was a clean, irreparable fracture. The experiment was over. The results were not just in. They were tattooed on my heart in letters of fire. My daughter was not just spoiled. She was not just ungrateful. She was a black hole of entitlement, a person who had erased my entire life's work in order to center her own narrative of struggle and triumph. I looked up at her, at this beautiful, terrible stranger standing before me. The pain was gone. The hurt was gone. All that remained was a profound, and strangely liberating, sense of clarity. "I see," I said. My voice was quiet. It was calm. It was the voice of a woman who had just been handed the final, irrefutable piece of data she needed to close a very, very long case. My composure seemed to unnerve her. She had expected tears, a final, desperate plea. My quiet acceptance was a reaction she did not know how to process. She hesitated for a moment, then turned and walked out of the diner, leaving me alone in the booth with 2 cold cups of coffee and the wreckage of a lifetime of love. I sat in the booth for a long time after Alicia left, the cheerful, bustling sounds of the diner, a strange, dissonant soundtrack to the quiet, cataclysmic event that had just occurred in my heart. I was not crying. I was not numb. I was in a state of preternatural calm, the kind of calm that comes after a violent storm has passed, leaving behind a sky that is swept clean and a landscape that is irrevocably altered. The 10-year experiment was over. The final report had been written, not in ink, but in the acid of my daughter's own cruel words. The question was no longer about her character. Her character had been revealed in all its ugly, unvarnished truth. The only question that remained was what I was going to do about it. I paid the bill for our untouched drinks, leaving the kind-faced waitress a $20 tip, a small act of anonymous kindness in a world that had just shown me its profound lack of it. I walked out of the warm, nostalgic diner and into the cool, indifferent air of the city. I did not go home. I did not want to be in the house filled with memories of the little girl my daughter used to be. Instead, I walked to my car, my sensible, reliable Ford, and I sat in the driver's seat. I did not start the engine. I simply sat, in the quiet of the car, and I made a single, calm phone call. I dialed the number for Frank Moss. Frank was more than just my financial advisor. He was my husband's oldest and dearest friend, a man they had served with in Vietnam. He was a man of deep integrity, of quiet strength, and he was the co-architect of the secret trust that had been the foundation of my experiment. He was the only person in the world who knew the full truth. He answered on the second ring, his voice the familiar gravelly rumble of a man who has seen it all. "Lena," he said, a note of warmth in his voice. "Good to hear from you. Everything all right?" "Hello, Frank," I said, my voice as calm and steady as a surgeon's hand. "Everything is, for the first time in a very long time, perfectly clear." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Frank knew me well enough to know that this tone of voice meant something significant had happened. "Okay," he said slowly. "I'm listening." I did not tell him the details of the conversation. I did not recount the insults, the cruelty. He did not need to know the emotional specifics. He only needed to know the final, operational conclusion. "The Alicia Jackson Price Support Trust," I said, the name of the legal entity sounding strange and foreign in my own mouth. "It has served its purpose. The experiment is concluded." Another pause, this one longer, heavier. Frank had never been a fan of the experiment. He had seen it as a form of self-torture on my part. I could almost hear the quiet, grim satisfaction in his silence. "So it's time then?" he asked, his voice low. "It's time, Frank," I confirmed. "I want you to dissolve the trust. Immediately. Liquidate any assets that need to be liquidated. Close all the accounts. Sever all the ties." "Consider it done," he said, and there was a note of profound, almost joyful relief in his voice. "The paperwork is already prepared. I've had it waiting for years. I can have it all finalized by the end of the business day tomorrow." "There's one more thing," I said. "I need you to prepare a final statement. A full, forensic accounting of the trust, from its inception 10 years ago to its dissolution today. I want every penny accounted for. Every rent check. Every car payment. Every utility bill. And I want a full, itemized printout of the credit card expenditures. Every coffee, every designer handbag, every vacation. I want it all in a single, comprehensive document. A final report card," Frank said, a grim smile in his voice. He understood perfectly. "Exactly," I said. "And I need you to have it delivered to her by professional courier, as soon as it's ready. It will be my distinct pleasure, Lena," he said, his voice now full of a fierce, protective loyalty. "It will be my distinct pleasure." "Thank you, Frank," I said. "For everything." I ended the call. It was done. With a single 5-minute phone call, I had set in motion the complete and total dismantling of my daughter's life. The invisible, financial scaffolding that had held up her entire, beautiful, sophisticated world for a decade was about to be kicked away. And she had no idea she was standing on it. She was about to learn the true meaning of the words fixed income. Frank Moss was a man who took a quiet, professional pride in his work. He was a wealth manager of the old school, a man who believed in meticulous record-keeping, in the unimpeachable truth of a balanced ledger. The task I had given him was not a chore. It was, as he had said, a distinct pleasure. He approached the creation of Alicia's final report card with the focused, almost gleeful intensity of a prosecutor preparing his closing argument in a case he knew he was going to win. His team at Franklin Moss Wealth Management spent the next 2 days in a whirlwind of activity. They were not just compiling numbers, they were telling a story. The story of a decade of profound, and profoundly unappreciated, generosity. They pulled the records from the subcorporation that had been set up to lease Alicia's midtown loft. They printed out a 10-year history of every single rent check, each one for a princely sum, each one drawn from the trust's accounts. 120 consecutive payments, a silent, monthly testament to the roof over her head. They pulled the records from the anonymous leasing company that held the title to her Audi. They detailed every monthly payment, every insurance premium, every maintenance bill, all paid for, seamlessly and silently, by the trust. They pulled the utility records. The electricity that powered her life, the gas that heated her water, the high-speed internet that allowed her to project her curated existence to the world, all of it, a decade's worth, paid for by the mother she had just called a failure. But the centerpiece of the report, the part that Frank's team assembled, with a particular, forensic relish, was the credit card history. The card, which Alicia believed was a generous, no-questions-asked stipend from the museum, was, in fact, a corporate card held in the name of the trust. Frank had the statements for every single month for the past 10 years. His team did not just print out the summaries. They created an itemized, categorized, and deeply revealing portrait of my daughter's life, as told through her expenditures. There were the restaurants, hundreds of them, from chic brunch spots to the most expensive, exclusive tasting menus in the city. Thousands of dollars spent on food she had likely photographed for her blog before eating. There were the clothes, a relentless, decade-long parade of purchases from high-end boutiques and luxury department stores. Designer handbags, Italian shoes, clothes for a life of leisure and sophistication, all paid for by the profits of a commercial cleaning company. There were the vacations, a ski trip to Aspen, a summer rental in the Hamptons, a research trip to Art Basel in Miami, flights, five-star hotels, spa treatments, all meticulously documented, all funded by the trust. The final document was not just a binder of financial statements. It was a monument. It was a thick, heavy, and legally bound portfolio, the kind one might present to the board of a major corporation. On its handsome, dark blue cover, embossed in gold leaf, were the words, "The Alicia Jackson Price Support Trust, a 10-year financial review, final statement." It was a ledger of a lie, not my lie, but hers. The lie she had told herself, and the world, about her own brilliant, self-made success. This document was the irrefutable, to the penny proof that her entire life was a fiction, a carefully curated performance funded by the very woman she held in such profound contempt. Frank called me on Thursday afternoon. "It's ready," he said, his voice grimly satisfied. "It's a work of art, Lena. It's the Moby Dick of ungrateful children." "Thank you, Frank," I said. "Please have it delivered tomorrow." "The courier is scheduled for 10:00 a.m., he confirmed. "He will require a signature." And the mechanism was now fully armed. The truth, in all its itemized, undeniable detail, was about to be delivered. Friday morning found Alicia in her natural habitat, the sleek, minimalist expanse of her midtown loft. The space was her sanctuary, her stage, and the primary physical evidence of her success. With its floor-to-ceiling windows, its collection of modern art, and its carefully chosen, expensive furniture, the apartment was a testament to her sophisticated taste, a world away from the common diner in Corktown or the stuffy little bungalow in Bagley. She was, I am sure, feeling a profound sense of triumph. She had finally, after a lifetime of frustration, told her mother the unvarnished truth. She had put me in my place. And now, she was free. She was unburdened. She was on her way to Paris, to the life she truly deserved. The small, unpleasant matter of the apartment deposit was a temporary logistical hurdle that her own brilliance would surely overcome. She was likely sitting at her large, glass and steel desk, composing an email to the Moreau Fellowship Committee, perhaps, or scrolling through listings for Parisian antique markets, when the buzzer from the front lobby of her building rang. She would have answered, her voice clipped and impatient, annoyed at the interruption. The doorman would have announced, "A delivery for you, Dr. Jackson Price, from Franklin Moss Wealth Management." The name would have meant nothing to her. She would have assumed it was a financial prospectus from some firm trying to win her business, a common occurrence for the city's young professionals. "Just leave it with the concierge," she would have said. "I'm sorry, doctor," the doorman would have replied. "The courier says it requires your personal signature." Annoyed but intrigued, she would have gone down to the lobby. There, a professional courier in a crisp uniform would have been waiting, holding a large, heavy, and deeply official-looking package. He would have presented her with a digital scanner, and she would have scribbled her signature, a small act of administrative annoyance. She would have taken the package, surprised by its weight. Back in the sterile, quiet elevator, she would have examined it. The handsome, dark blue cover, the embossed, gold leaf lettering, the Alicia Jackson Price Support Trust, a 10-year financial review, final statement. The name would have been a puzzle, a strange, formal title that had no context in her world. She would have felt a flicker of unease, a sense of a mystery she did not understand. Back in her apartment, she would have placed the heavy binder on her glass desk. She would have poured herself a glass of sparkling water. She was not afraid. She was curious. She was a brilliant woman, an academic, a researcher. This was just a document, a piece of data to be analyzed. She would have untied the silk ribbon that bound the portfolio. She would have opened the cover. And her world, the beautiful, sophisticated, and self-made world she so deeply believed in was about to be deconstructed, page by damning page. Alicia would have turned to the first page. It was a simple, elegant summary, a table of contents for the story of her own life. It was divided into sections: residency costs, transportation, utilities, and discretionary spending. Credit card account, 4,582 XXXXX, XXXXXXXXX, 9,012. She would have frowned, a flicker of genuine confusion in her eyes. My credit card? How do they have my credit card number? She would have turned to the first section, residency costs, and she would have seen it. A 10-year ledger of the monthly rent payments for her own apartment. Each payment was listed by date and amount, a relentless chronological accounting of the roof over her head. And next to each payment, in a column marked source of funds, were the same 3 words: A. J. P. Support Trust. The confusion would have begun to curdle into a dawning, sickening sense of dread. She would have flipped, her movements now frantic, to the transportation section. And there it was again. The monthly lease payments for her Audi. The insurance premiums. The maintenance records. All paid for, month after month, year after year, by this mysterious trust. She would have scrambled through the pages, a rising tide of panic beginning to overwhelm her. The utility bills, the electricity, the gas, the internet, all of it. A decade of her life, a decade of her perceived independence, was being laid bare as a complete and total fiction. And then, she would have reached the final, and thickest, section. Discretionary spending. She would have seen the first credit card statement, from 10 years ago. A small charge for a cappuccino at a cafe near the museum. A charge for a new pair of shoes. And at the bottom of the statement, the line, payment in full, received from A. J. P. Support Trust. She would have turned the page. And another. And another. 120 consecutive credit card statements. A decade of her choices, her tastes, her life, all meticulously documented, all paid for by a secret, invisible benefactor. She would have seen the receipts for the designer clothes she wore to impress her colleagues. The bills from the 5-star restaurants where she had held court, lecturing on art and philosophy. The airline tickets for the research trip to Miami. The hotel bill from the ski trip to Aspen. Every single purchase was a small, sharp, and deeply personal betrayal. Every line item was a testament to her own profound and catastrophic ignorance. The life she had been so proud of, the life she had built, as she had so cruelly told me, in spite of me, had not been built by her at all. It had been purchased for her. It had been a long-term, all-expenses-paid rental, and the lease was, she was beginning to suspect, about to expire. The binder was not just a financial document. It was a mirror. And in it, she was being forced to see herself for the first time, not as the brilliant, self-made intellectual, but as a kept woman, a spoiled, clueless child living on a secret allowance provided by the very mother she had just so viciously disavowed. The ledger of her lie was complete, and the final, devastating tally was yet to come. After what must have felt like an eternity, Alicia reached the final page of the binder. It was a single sheet of heavy, cream-colored paper, a stark and simple summary of the preceding 200 pages of her life. The page was titled, in the same, cold, gold-leaf lettering, Final Statement, Notice of Dissolution. It was divided into simple, brutal categories. Total residency costs, 10 years, a staggering 6-figure sum. Total transportation costs, 10 years, another handsome 5-figure number. Total utility, service costs, 10 years, a quiet testament to a decade of seamless, uninterrupted comfort. Total discretionary spending credit card account, 4,582 XXXXXXX 9,012, a number so large, so obscene, so representative of a life of thoughtless, casual luxury, that it would have made her gasp. And then, at the bottom of the page, was the final, devastating tally, the grand total, the sum of a decade of my secret, silent, and unacknowledged support. Total support provided by the Lena Jackson Trust. 1. 254. 321.58. Over $1.25 million. The number would have shimmered before her eyes, an impossible, incomprehensible figure. It was the tangible to the penny value of the mother she had just called a failure. And beneath that staggering number was a single, final paragraph, a paragraph that would have transformed her shock and humiliation into pure, primal terror. As of this date, Friday, November 15th, the Alicia Jackson Price Support Trust, established by the late Robert Jackson and Lena Jackson, has been legally and irrevocably dissolved. All assets have been reverted to the sole surviving grantor, Ms. Lena Jackson. All recurring payments managed by this trust, including but not limited to residency, transportation, and discretionary spending accounts, will now cease. Please find enclosed the first month's rent bill for your apartment at 4,500 Cass Avenue, which is now your personal and sole responsibility. The bill is due in 15 days. We wish you the very best in your future endeavors. The world would have fallen away. The beautiful, sun-drenched loft, the very symbol of her success, was no longer a perk. It was a bill. A massive, terrifying bill that was due in 2 weeks. The Audi in the garage was no longer a corporate lease. It was a liability. The credit card in her wallet was a useless piece of plastic. The fellowship in Paris, the dream she had been so willing to destroy me for, was now an impossible fantasy. The deposit she had so arrogantly demanded from me was a pittance compared to the financial reality that was now crashing down upon her. She was not on her way to Paris. She was on her way to being evicted. She had called me a failure, an uneducated woman, a burden. And in a single, quiet, and devastatingly professional document, I had just shown her that I was, in fact, the sole and uncredited founder of her entire life, and that the company of my support had just, officially, gone out of business. The fallout was not loud. It was a quiet, desperate implosion. Alicia's Parisian dream evaporated. The Moreau Fellowship, faced with her sudden inability to produce the required deposit, was regretfully withdrawn. Her life, once a seamless performance of effortless sophistication, became a frantic, panicked scramble for survival. She could not afford the loft. She was forced to break her lease, to pack up her carefully curated collection of art and furniture, and to move into a small, cramped apartment in a far less fashionable neighborhood. The Audi was repossessed. The credit card was cancelled. Dr. Alicia Jackson Price, the brilliant art curator, was forced to learn the mundane, brutal arithmetic of a budget, a skill she had disdained her entire adult life. She tried to call me, of course, dozens of times. Her initial calls were filled with a sputtering, incoherent rage. Then came the tears, the pleading, the desperate, hollow apologies. I did not answer. I did not listen to the voicemails. The conversation was over. The case was closed. A few months later, I was sitting in a downtown office with Frank Moss. The space was not a sleek, modern loft, but a bustling, hopeful community center in the heart of the city. We were reviewing the final charter documents for a new foundation I had established, a foundation funded with the entirety of the money from Alicia's dissolved trust. The foundation was called the Clean Sweep Grant. Its mission was simple. It provided substantial, no-strings-attached startup capital to working-class women in Detroit who had a dream of starting their own business. Women who wanted to open a small bakery, or a daycare center, or a landscaping company. Women like me. Women with grit, and a good idea, and not much else. The first round of applications is overwhelming, Lena, Frank said, a look of deep, genuine pride on his face. There are so many incredible women out there. So many good ideas that just need a little bit of fuel. I smiled, a real unburdened smile. Then let's give it to them, I said. I had spent a decade making a secret, foolish investment in a daughter who saw my life's work as a source of shame. I had poured over $1 million into a single, ungrateful vessel. Now, I was taking that same investment and pouring it into a community, into a dozen, 100, 1,000 different dreams. My daughter had called me a failure, an uneducated woman, a burden. She had told me I had never given her anything of real value. Perhaps she was right. The value was not in the money I had given her. The value was in the lesson I had finally, painfully, taught her. A lesson about the true cost of a life, and the quiet, unshakable dignity of the hands that build it. My legacy would not be the daughter I had raised. It would be the women I would help to rise. And that was a foundation that no amount of ingratitude could ever shake.